what's going on? This is TwoHeadedFlounder. Welcome back to another live deck profile. Today we're actually going to be taking a look at a weird deck that I've been playing online, and that's Empoleon Swampert. So I've been playing this on and off. I was testing it because I wanted to play it at my locals and everything like that. Just trying to get a feel for it, and I built it IRL just because I have the cards for it, so why not more testing? And it works pretty well. There's some rough matchups and everything, but every deck has its terrible matchups. And it works pretty much how it's supposed to, and sometimes, you know, you just have that terrible luck that all decks do, but for the most part, I've had some pretty good results with this, and I think it's fun. This isn't like a top tier deck. This is like, I want to have fun with a pretty decent deck, and this is it. So if you're into that like I am, then this is perfect for you. So getting into our Pokemon. Of course, seeing how we're playing these guys, we're going to need Piplups and Mudkips. So, starting things off with 3 copies of the 70 HP Piplup. These aren't really worth mentioning. Choice Band and an Energy for Peck can hit for 40 if you really need it. We're playing this one because of the 70 HP. We're not worrying about Professor Elm or anything in this deck, so this is the perfect HP number 4 to be at. However, we are playing a single one-off of the Splatter 60 HP Piplup, because Splatter has actually proven to be kind of useful in sniping my opponent. Sometimes you just can't hit the numbers. Sometimes your opponent's refusing to bench Pokemon. Total Command really relies on bench Pokemon to do damage. And sometimes you're like 20 damage short, and it sucks. So Splatter actually helps out pretty well. If you don't have a Guzzmore or anything along those lines for the turn, attach an energy, put this up, and just snipe for the 20. It doesn't always work out well, and sometimes if you lead off with this, it could be disastrous. But for the most part, I've really relied on this in a pinch, and it works out pretty well. Next up, we have 2 copies of Prinplup, because getting out Empoleon in this deck is very important, being our main attacker. So sharing rare candy between 2 stage 2s can be very, very annoying. And also we have an Articuno in this deck, so hiding behind Articuno and just evolving manually isn't the worst thing half the time. Prinplup is worth a mention though, because Bubble Beam does do 20, and flip a coin if your opponent's active, if heads, your opponent's active is now paralyzed, and that's great stall if need be. With the Choice Band, that's 50 damage, and Paralysis, I like that a lot. It's pretty decent. I've used that a few times. And lastly, of course, we are playing 4 copies of Empoleon because it's the bread and butter of the deck. Total Command is what we do and want to do pretty much every turn. Attack does 20 damage times 20 more for each bench Pokemon in play. So what I should say is it does times the amount of Pokemon on the bench, both yours and your opponent's. So ideal situation, you both have 5 Pokemon on your benches, you're doing 200 damage, Choice Band 230, you're probably knocking out some pretty, you know, relevant Pokemon with that. Golisopod, Zoroark, Lycanroc. The tag teams will be able to survive, which is kind of a bummer, but actually with something like a Shrine of Punishment, you can knock out Pikarom. So that is actually worth a mention. And that's really probably the one guy that would devastate this deck, being weak to Electric. So, really solid attacker, really solid 1 prize attacker. Very difficult to get out sometimes, but definitely worth it. I've played with this card in the past, always really enjoyed it. So next up, we're playing 3 copies of Mudkip. Again, not really worth anything mentioning. You can do 40 for 1 with a Choice Band, and it has 70 HP. We're not going to be playing any weird games with the 60 HP one because it doesn't really do anything too fantastic, but 70 HP is nice to sit on. We're playing 1 copy of Marshtomp because this is not as relevant as Prinplup. Muddy Water, though, can do 20 and snipe 20 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So what I did say about Splatter can also apply to Marshtomp, but this is for an extra energy. I really don't rely on this one too much. It's just to help evolve into Swampert if need be. Then we have 2 copies of Swampert. I would have liked a 3rd one in the deck. It's kind of hard to fit a 3rd one into the deck and rely on it too much. I guess you could drop the Marshtomp, put a 3rd Swampert in, really rely on rare candy at that point, but I'm not a big fan. I like the 3 Mudkip because in case I have to lead off with one and sacrifice one, at least I have a backup. And this isn't really like the main Pokemon we need to get out. The real synergy with this card is we can go ahead and utilize Super Boost Energy with it, and it can hit some pretty good numbers. But really also the fact that Power Draw with Aqua Patch and Water Energy is a very, very solid combination. So discarding a Water Energy, drawing 3, drawing into Aqua Patch, attaching 2 energy per turn, that's really what this deck wants to do. So you can hit total commands pretty much every turn. Other than that, Hydro Pump's a pretty solid attack overall. If you can power this up with Aqua Patch and attaching, go for it. I pretty much have to rely on attacking with Swampert at least once per game. So you are going to have to attack with this guy. It's just what's going to happen. But beautiful thing is both Swampert and Empoleon are 160 HP stage 2s that are 1 prize attackers. Very hefty retreat cost on that guy though. 3 being like the most in the deck. Him and Marshtomp. And then of course we have Articuno. I am playing 1. I have tried 2, but it gets a little clunky. 1, as long as it doesn't get prized, is pretty much all you need. We're playing cards in here and you should at least get a turn 1 Articuno all the time as long as it's not prized. Blizzard Veil, as long as this Pokemon is active, whenever your opponents place a supporter from their hand to target, prevent all effects onto it to your bench water Pokemon. So they can't target down our bench with this, which means they have to deal with this. And really the only way I've ever seen anybody get around this on me is with Escape Rope. So that's kind of a pain, but no one really plays it. So yeah. Cold Cyclone does 70. Move 2 Water Energy, attach this Pokemon to your bench Pokemon. So if you can lead off with this, attach a Water, pass. Next turn comes around, attach another Water. You can hit something, maybe get a knockout on like a Zorua or something. And then move the 2 energy to your bench and put it on a Piplup. And they can't pull up Piplup, they have to knock out Articuno. And then hopefully by that point you are hitting them with Total Command for a lot of damage. So very, very important card to the deck and works out very well. So moving on to our supporters, we actually are playing a very weird lineup here. So we're going to start things off with 4 Guzma. I just personally like playing the 4 Guzma. I don't know about you, but I'm always discarding Guzmas because they're usually the most discardable card in my hand if I need to. And it's unfortunate to say, but you know, Guzma gets targeted by me a lot for discarding, and I like to play the 4 copies of that because of that. And I can reliably discard 1 and still have 3 in the deck. But it's also good because Swampert has a hefty retreat cost, and it's very fun to play around with Articuno as well. They can't Guzma any up your guys, but you can Guzma up something, and then Articuno is still on the bench. And if you need to stall later on, you can just put Articuno back up in the active. But yeah, very fun turn 1 if you have that and like just the ability to get Articuno in play. So this used to be a 4 of in the deck, but I've since turned it down to 3 because it's not really super necessary turn 1 to Lily, but we are playing 3 copies of Lily. My original version of the deck was just draw Lily turn 1, draw lots of cards, but then I moved on to playing other supporters that actually work very well in this deck. And I had to drop Lily down a little bit, but there is definitely something to be said that if you can play a lot of cards turn 1 and then Lily into 8, you're probably in a very good situation. So at least having 3 is definitely the minimum I would do for this deck because it's pretty important. We are playing 2 copies of Cynthia. I know, crazy, right? So Cynthia is very good because there's going to be time you have a very clunked up hand and you need to get a new hand, but you don't want to discard any of those cards because you need rare candies and you need the choice bands. But yeah, sometimes you really need to do some stuff, and this is something I've had to include because of just being in terrible situations with just giant hand sizes, but like nothing to play in them. So Cynthia has proven to be pretty useful. Honestly, you could probably drop this down to 1 if you really wanted to. It's not that important, but it is also still pretty good. So 2 of. This is where the deck gets really fun though. So we're actually playing 2 copies of Steven's Resolve. search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. Your turn ends. Usually not very good. However, if we can get this turn 1, which I actually reliably do with only 2 in the deck, Articuno, sitting in the active, they can't touch any of our bench. We can freely go ahead, search our deck for rare candy Pokemon to evolve into and supporter for next turn. Or we can look at our hand, realize that we have a supporter for the next turn, do a whole bunch of... It gets into really crazy things. I love this card in this deck. I love this card with Articuno in general. It's fantastic. But yeah, super, super solid in anything with Articuno, really. And then last but not least, we have a copy of Sightseer. I know this one is super random, but as you can kind of tell, we don't have much so far to discard cards. And discarding water energy is pretty useful for Aqua Patch. So we have a copy of Sightseer because it's not the worst one. I tried Ingo and Emmett. Not really a big fan of that. It was more of a nuisance discarding very important things like rare candies, while this one is I don't have to discard rare candies if I don't want to. So yeah, this is great for getting water into the discard pile. Not that you always want to, but it does help, obviously. Moving on to our stadiums, because I'm actually going to put them right below our supporters. I got 2 copies of Brooklet Hill, because this is going to help get pretty much all your Pokemon out, and it helps turn 1 get Articuno out, which is something, again, you really want to do. So, yeah, this is great. There's not really much else to be said about it. It helps you get your basic water Pokemon out, and we play all water Pokemon, so that's very useful. And last but not least, we're playing 2 copies of Shrine of Punishment because, again, I've already mentioned this actually will allow us to hit the numbers to get a knockout on a Pikarom, which is fantastic for a 1-prize attacker. But yeah, this definitely helps with the numbers too, because if your opponent is just going, oh, I know what that does, I'm not going to bench any Pokemon, ha 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 ha. You go, okay, well, if you're not benching Pokemon, at least I'm still getting damage on your Pokemon, so I'm still getting win and knockouts. So you can choose what you want to do, but this actually helps out a whole lot. I prefer this over Brooklet, but Brooklet is so important for helping get turn 1 Articuno that you kind of have to do a 50-50 split here. So next up, we are playing 4 copies of Rare Candy. Sorry for the mixed match, but that's really all I had left lying around. So here we are. This is effectively going to allow us to skip the middle evolutions of Prinplup and Marshtomp and just get Swampert and Empoleon out. And of course, they're very, very important for this deck because just skipping that middle evolution lets us attack faster and use abilities faster. We're playing 4 copies of Aqua Patch because really recycling energy in this deck is the most important thing, and this is one of those cards that if you had Ingo inhibited, you'd be like, oh my god, I hate this card so much. But again, Sightseer works out really well with Aqua Patch, and again, Swampert's ability with Aqua Patch is fantastic. Just discarding water, drawing into Aqua Patch, attaching the energy from the discard pile, then it's super, super good and synergistic. It works very well. So this is actually like one of the first decks I played with no Ultra Ball in it, and I have to say it's fine. It really is. Sometimes you don't draw what you need, but that happens in Zoroark and everything else anyways. But yeah, we're playing 4 copies of Nest Ball. I guess you could drop this in 3, maybe put like another Pokeball or Ultra Ball or something in here. But this seems to work out fine. We just want to grab the little guys, and we're drawing into cards and everything else anyways, so... great for getting Articuno, great for getting Mudkip and Piplup. Seems to work out pretty well for me so far. We have 3 copies of Choice Band because, again, hitting those numbers is very important. I was originally playing 4, but I actually decided to put the second Cynthia in the deck because I thought maybe it would be more useful after being in those terrible situations, but very, very important card in the deck. This is what helps us get the knockouts. So if you're really not seeing a lot of, value from at least one of the Cynthias, drop it for a 4th Choice Band. But I have run into quite a few non-EX GX decks online. So things like Lost March are very annoying for this deck, and you don't really want to draw into Choice Man, and at that point you just start discarding them with Power Draw. So you get into weird situations. 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher, because getting the Pokemon in this deck back is very important. We really want to have as many total command attacks as possible, but also sometimes they're going to knock out a Swampert, and we want to get that Swampert. Last but not least, we play a single copy of Palpad, because getting literally any of these back is pretty useful, and I just like having it. Probably not the best target for Steven Resolve, as long as you don't have Articuno, but if you have Articuno, play Palpad for Steven's Resolve, see what happens. And finally, we're moving on to our energy. Now, I really wish that there was room in this deck for one more at least, but we are going to be playing 8 copies of Water Energy, because it's very important, and we need a lot, and we need to draw into it so we can Power Draw them, or attach them, and Aqua Patch them. And lastly, we have a copy of Super Boost Energy. We can only play this one of in the deck. It is a Prism card, but when this is attached to a Stage 2 Pokemon, it provides every single type of energy for that Pokemon. Only 1 energy at a time. If you have 3 or more Stage 2 Pokemon in play, this provides 4. So it's a Rainbow Energy times 4 if we have literally 2 Swamperts or 2 Empoleon with one or the other in play. So as long as we have 3 Stage 2s in play, we're good to go. And this is really for Swampert, but this can actually be used for Empoleon's second attack. It gets kind of crazy when you have to do weird things, but Empoleon's second attack does do 90 and allows you to discard an energy off of your opponent's active. So if you need to stall and remove energy from them, there is that possibility. Other than that, this is really for Swampert, just hitting a lot of number. This on a Swampert lets you automatically hit for 160. Choice Band's 190. And if you can Aqua Patch or just attach more Water Energy, you can hit numbers, and it's pretty good. So that's the deck. That's the list. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's a fun deck, a very, very good fun deck. There is potential, but I don't think you're going to go around beating every Lost March or Pika Rom deck out there. So don't try bringing this to like a tournament and going, oh yeah, I'm going to win. But if you go to your locals or your leagues or something, this is a very, very fun deck. Even playing online is a very fun deck. So that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, stick around for more in the future. And if you liked it, you can leave a like, comment, or subscribe. And I will see you all next time.